You should all have a copy of the final draft in front of you. Before I get into the meat of this, I'd like to thank the committee, Councilor Mimi Woodson, Councilor Judy Thomas, and Councilor John House for their devotion and dedication and working with us all through this and putting up with their chairman. When we started the committee, we asked John Redmond, our city auditor, to participate with us to keep us in line and keep us also educated on different routes you can take as far as numbers, and he proved to be invaluable. The first meeting we pulled together, we invited Drell Short to come in and present and talk about the fleet management so we could get an understanding of that operation and how it intertwines with all the departments that have the use of city vehicles. We found her to be also an invaluable part of this, and we asked her to sit in and stay with us through the entire. She met with us every time and also proved to be an invaluable asset. As we began walking through the 1995 Take-Home Committee report, we quickly realized that the environment has changed, and we broadened our scope to include the advent of use of technology and also some legal aspects that we'll get into in just a minute. We met with each city agency and department head who have the use of city vehicles and or a car allowance to gather information on how they use the vehicles and to what extent. The focus of the committee was to develop a policy which best serves the city regarding our budget and our financial situation. The policy will be reviewed at least annually by the committee, or at any period anyone has a question or a concern about the process, the direction it's going, or want to have a discussion about possible changes. We will be glad to meet at any time. What I'd like to do now is just walk through the 11 items that you have in front of you and basically summarize. Items 1 and 2 create a new policy to allow public safety and certain governmental employees to drive a city vehicle to their residence, not only in Muskogee, but Harris, Talbot, and Chattahoochee counties. This, if you recall, this was probably the initial, what got us to this point of calling for a committee was several requests came to council to discuss this. Item 3 prohibits the driving of city vehicles to a residence across the Alabama border. Alabama does not recognize our sovereign immunity, and we will talk more about this in just a minute. Items 4 and 5 clarify the conditions under which a public safety vehicle may cross the Alabama border, and that basically involves in the active pursuit of public safety. Item 6 and 7 clarifies it is the responsibility of the employee for the maintenance and pre-operational checklist of the assigned vehicle, along with, it talks about disciplinary action if there is neglect. Item 8 allows the flexibility in the policy to address any changes for an employee if they are required to travel in the normal course of their job. That opens the door for an employee or supervisor to bring to our attention the need to have a car for this particular employee in their daily operation or some type of allowance. It allows that discussion. Item 9 gives direction that all written notifications regarding this policy will be sent to the city manager. And item 10 clarifies when an employee shall participate in the required training courses of the city as needed. Item 11 clarifies the approval process for those employees who are on duty for a specific period of time. It allows the option of a car allowance or payment of mileage and describes the approval process. Going back to item 3, the Alabama border issue, we met with the mayor and the city attorney regarding our sovereign immunity issue. The mayor has had discussions with Attorney General Chris Carr, and we've also had conversations with the city attorney on how best to address this in our policy, and that's why you see, according to the legal community, we need to prohibit cars from going across Alabama. It just opens up litigation, and we do not want to go down that road. I guess the goal in this outreach to the Attorney General is to allow us to have the ability to work with our neighboring communities, both in Alabama and Georgia. If there's a situation such as Beauregard, for example, we have the technology to go find folks who have been caught in a crumbled house or under debris. We could not send that technology over there and help them because of the sovereign immunity laws. So we are asking the Attorney General to look at this not just for Columbus, but for all border communities with Alabama. So we suggest that council consider, and I have asked the city attorney to address, the committee has asked the city attorney to draft a resolution to accompany the mayor's letter to the Attorney General to put this in front of him as a request from Columbus. So we will bring that up in just a little while. The next item we wanted to talk to you about is items 1 and 2. In opening this up to allow vehicles to be taken to the adjacent counties when they drive home, our budget and analysis and cost of that, we feel like it would be somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. I'm going to ask Councilor House if he would give you more specifics on that at this time.
Okay, Councilor House.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Allen. We thank the city manager and the finance department for the analysis that they did, which used the standard GAO or IRS mileage rate, and that number came up with about $200,000 as far as what it would cost us in the budget. We felt the gas alone was probably a better way to look at it because that GAO number includes maintenance costs as well as a different gas cost than the city faces. And so we took a look at using the chart that was compiled. The highest average miles per day was 22 miles per day. If you divide that by 15 miles per gallon, then each car uses about 1.5 more gallons per day if it's driven outside the county. I used a cost of $2 per gallon for the price of gas, even though the day that I did the analysis, Columbus was paying $1.79 per gallon. But if you multiply that 1.5 gallons times $2 per cost, that's $3 per day per car that it's going to cost. I was not sure of the number of days that we should use for law enforcement officers, public safety, so I decided to use the marshal's shift because I work Monday to Friday. And so assuming 2 weeks of vacation, no sick days, no holidays, that means an officer works about 50 weeks in a year or 250 work days. I think this is probably overestimating the number of days that they work, but still using that, so 250 days times $3 per day times the 66 cars that would be going outside, it came up with 49,500. Still, there's probably, we won't know for sure until we actually, have people drive, but we're estimating around $50,000 is what we think it would be the budgetary impact on allowing the cars to go into the additional counties in Georgia.
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor, if I could just give me about another 2 minutes, then we'll open it up for questions and discussions.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned in earlier comments, we saw that the environment's changed, so we asked IT to come in and talk to us about any technologies that may help us in getting a handle on take-home cars, car allowances, mileage driven in the daily function of the employees. And they called in one of our vendors, Verizon, and Verizon has a system called Verizon Connect. And basically it is a device, they have a device that you hook into the city car, and it tracks just about everything that you need on that car. It has a maintenance schedule. It sends an email to the employee or the supervisor to remind them when the car needs change. Sends to both. You can set it up any way you want to department head, supervisor, that kind of thing. There's pretty much unlimited use in that realm, but it also tracks routes that they drive, the speed. If the car is in an accident, it sends a notice to get emergency vehicles there on the scene. It also, if they run into a problem, it alerts for roadside assistance. and also it tracks the mileage. It's unlimited users, so you can cancel at any time. Has a lifetime warranty on the hardware that we put in the cars and trucks, and it also interfaces with our GIS system. So it's a seamless operation. The cost of that is to buy the harness, which is a small device that goes installed into the car, can be installed by our staff. Drell quickly told us that we have the capability of doing that ourselves, so we'll save all that cost. The harness itself is $30, and then there's a $19 a month fee associated with the tracking and the connection of each of those in the cars and vehicles. I don't want to speak for Drell, but some of her comments were that she was very impressed with this system and thought that it would enhance our ability to extend the life of the vehicles that we have currently. And she thought it would, the initial fee of the harness and the monthly fee would certainly save the city money over the years. We propose that tracking the mileage for several months, and then those reports being sent to the city auditor for reporting back to the committee and then us to deliver to you. The harnesses can be installed, like I said, by our shop, and those employees who have a car allowance, the IT department introduced us to a couple of applications that can be downloaded on their city cell phones that would also basically track their mileage. It's a very simple application to utilize. We could perform this over several months so that we can have data that provides the council with the numbers that would show where they're driving and how much they're utilized. And we even thought about developing a car allowance range. If you drive certain miles in a year, then your car allowance is X. If you drive more than that, then it goes up a little bit. And if you drive over a certain amount, and that can be set by council. We've talked about a range there. So we did a survey. We asked the city auditor to survey some similar sized cities on car allowances, and just to kind of walk through real quick, Chatham County, their car allowance is $350, and they pay 58 cents per mile on personal use. Augusta Richmond is $600 to the city manager, and then they only pay 40 cents a mile for their personal use. They are phasing out take-home vehicles, no take-home vehicles allowed out of the county, and no mileage for out-of-town trips. Athens Clark is $500 to executives and some department heads. They pay 58 cents. Albany, Georgia, $250 to $750, which is paid to the city manager, deputy city manager, city attorney, and some department heads. And they also utilize the 58-cent mileage reimbursement. Savannah pays from $400 to $500 to city executives and some department heads. And again, several options, several ways we can go in this. We could choose to do nothing, leave it as it is, or we could track the mileage for a year or several months and kind of try to get a handle on who's driving, how far they're driving, and what the car is being used for. And Mayor, I'd like to open it up to questions and further discussion at this time.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, I think you had some comments.
I didn't punch in.
Or City Manager, I've done that again.
Okay.
I'm going to have to remember who does what. It's only been 6 months.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I had some comments on item number 1 and 11, and Councilor House just addressed his mathematical formula for calculating the projected cost for gas only, and that's gas only, $50,000. And so, of course, I had our our professional finance staff to do some calculations. And these are just concerns that I emailed to each, the mayor and council members, for your consideration. And I sent those to you because I feel as city manager I have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility, to provide you with a budget impact now and in the future, and that is what I have attempted to do. And so I have no objections to the notion of public safety vehicles going out of county, but we need to understand the budget impact and be prepared to finance the plan, if you will. And so when I asked them to calculate the total budget impact for going out of county, and under number one, they provided me with an estimated cost of approximately $2,900 per vehicle per year for additional fuel and maintenance costs. We can't just consider fuel. We've got to consider maintenance because maintenance will increase as your miles go up, and it's going to have wear and tear and depreciation on the car. You're not going to get the same number of years if you add this additional mileage. And so what the budget office prepared and shared with me is that this could add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the city's annual budget. And they did an immediate projection based on the current 41 public safety personnel driving vehicles out of county. Their immediate projection is $203,254.27, and I did provide a chart. And when they looked at this immediate projections, other things that has to be considered or was not clear, is not clear, is that if officers are allowed to use the vehicles for part-time employment, and they are, will they be able to drive to part-time employment in other counties? And an example would be if, for example, I know a deputy sheriff. I saw the sheriff here, and I know one person lives in Cuthbert down in Chattahoochee County. And so the question that's unclear is if they live in Chattahoochee County, where they typically drive their vehicle home, will that person now, of course, be allowed to, obviously, to drive the vehicle home on their off day or on when they're on vacation? They drive the vehicle back to Columbus to do their part-time work at the movie theater. And so, obviously, there's additional fuel cost that hasn't been considered if you're considering the marshal's office as a model Monday through Friday. The question is, will that person be able to drive to say, well, I've got a vehicle now, I can do Harris and Talbot and Chattahoochee County. Will they now be able to drive to take a job in Talbot County? Can they drive from Chattahoochee County over to Talbot County to their part-time employment? Or from Chattahoochee County to Harris County, because now I've got a vehicle and there's no gas issue for me. That's not calculated in this. And the question is, can an officer now in Columbus now drive and take a part-time job in Chattahoochee County, Talbot County, or Harris County? Because I can drive my public safety vehicle to Chattahoochee County, Talbot County, or Harris County for my part-time employment. Your fuel calculation perhaps did not capture this because we don't know this. And so it would not impact just the 41 if that occurs. It opens the door to every single public safety person to now drive out of county for part-time work. Those are just questions that are not answered and projections that we can't make at this time. And so, and then, just down the road from a legal standpoint, and I've said to the city attorney, as this grows, will some officers public safety folks say, well, there's a value to that I don't receive, and I live in Muscogee County. There's a value. And give me something equivalent to that value. Things obviously don't pop up until they get going good, and then you see something else that you didn't see coming, and so that would be a concern. The concern with me is that, are we providing an incentive for officers to move out of county rather than providing an incentive for officers to move into the county? I mean, if that's it, it may be an unintended consequence. We're incentivizing them now. You can move to Chattahoochee and Talbot and Harris. You don't have to live in Muscogee County. And so they all migrate to the suburb where they can get more for their money. And so we have 41 officers today that will receive this incentive. And I just don't know, and we need to think about how is it going to grow and how fast is it going to grow. In 10 years, we may have 100 officers that's now doing this. And so then when it grows to a point that it becomes an issue, how will the mayor and future city councilors reverse it? They're going to go to public safety and say, well, it's gotten out of hand and we're going to take it away from you. And so, you know, that's a concern. And then, so, you know, what has been provided by the finance staff, the way they calculated the cost, if you live in the 41, they know exactly where they live, and they went to the fire EMS station that's closest to traveling to that county, and they calculated the miles from the fire station to their home and back. And they did it for the number of work days, and they came up with a number. And things that we don't think about that I want to make sure we think about is the original intent. The original intent for the public safety take-home car program was to ensure or increase citizen taxpayer benefit. I was here when they wanted to increase the police presence in neighborhoods and around apartment complexes to make people feel safe and make them safer. And so if all of these vehicles, you know, start to migrate out of the county, you have to ask the question, are we diminishing the citizen taxpayer benefit, the original intent? And so that is a question in my mind, you know, about police visibility being diminished because we have fewer vehicles in the county and more out in the county. And out in the county, they're going to feel, I got a police officer next door with the car sitting out there. And from a fire EMS standpoint, I even thought about that. I've heard the chief talk about when they go on a fire call, they leave the station, you know, it's open, there's no one there, and they've had people actually go into the station and take their personal belongings because they know everything's running hot. Fire truck's gone, ambulance gone, and they go in and basically rob the station. And so the public safety vehicle, when they park them at the station, is a deterrent. It says to them, there's 2 police cars over there, don't go over there, though the fire truck's gone. And so I wanted to share those thoughts and concerns, and you know, we ought to do whatever it is we're trying to do, but I think we need to think about things perhaps we've not thought about. And then when it comes to number 11, I think you know, we offered people, department heads, many of them, a car allowance as part of their recruitment employment packet. And I don't disagree with what appears you're trying to do, but I think it should probably be on a going forward basis. You know, the morale of department heads is not where I would like it to be when it comes to pay, when they look across Phoenix City. I saw this morning Phoenix City is going to give a 2% raise October 1st, and then they're going to give a 1% April 1st. The fire chief over there makes more than our fire chief, where they've got a $30 million budget. We've got a $285 million budget. We've got 200,000 people. They got 30,000. The city manager makes more than the city manager over here and gets car allowance and all that. The engineering director makes $20,000, $30,000 more than our engineering director. And so when you look at Savannah, the Savannah city manager makes $238,000. Pay me $238,000, I'll take a $250 car allowance or $500. The city manager in Augusta makes over $200,000 a year. You know, in Albany, the city manager makes more than. So I just want to make sure so when it comes to the department heads, and the car allowance was basically for the inner city travel, the local travel. The 28 cents a mile, the reduced IRS rate, is for when you go beyond 50 miles. And so when I asked staff, well, how much did we pay in the 28 cents a mile outside of 50 miles? And in fiscal year 16, it's $973. In fiscal year 17, it's $2,056. In fiscal year 18, it's $2,900. And in fiscal year 19, it's $3,600. So for underpaid department heads and the car allowance being a part of their salary packet, I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. On a going forward basis, it's an understanding coming in. But to go and take away something that employees have been accustomed to, I can tell you from personal experience, it is going to cost them to travel if you take the 28 cents a mile away. I know because I've been on both sides, with a car and with the 28 cents a mile. It will cost you. And so I said to, and I'll close with this, I said to the mayor the other day, I've got to go to the International City County Managers meeting in Nashville in September. Without the 28 cents a mile, that's a 5-hour drive. I drive to Nashville any day of the week. 5 hours. In fact, I can drive up there and come back the same day. But if it's going to cost me to do the taxpayer's business, I'm going to go to Columbus Airport, and I'm going to fly to Nashville, and I'm going to get a taxi to the hotel and back to the airport and fly back to Columbus. So it won't cost me to do taxpayer business. And so I just caution moving too swiftly on this without considering the commitment made to department heads when they were hired and taking the $3,600 away from all department heads combined. In my mind, the juice is not worth the squeeze to damage the morale of your underpaid department heads. And for public safety, I know you're willing to add that expense, but consider the unintended consequences and consider the position it's going to leave future elected officials, the mayor and city council. If they had left that to you to have to reverse today, I question how you would do it. And so I ask you to just proceed with caution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor
Mayor, if I
Crabb?
could.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Councilor Allen, you wanted to?
Just real quickly, we appreciate as I said, we met with the city manager twice and the mayor twice on this and talked through the issues. We appreciate the city manager's comments, and we called a special meeting to discuss the comments that he provided, and we did take action, made some changes in some of them. The numbers, as Councilor House called out earlier, the numbers that were crunched by the staff utilize 52 weeks of working a year, and we know no employee works 52 weeks a year. So we're already paying for depreciation and maintenance on the car, so we took that factor out. We just tried to look at the use of fuel. One of the department heads in public safety said they could cover the cost of the additional fuel in their current budget. And again, I want to remind everyone, this is a fluid document. This is something we can revisit and make changes at any time. So if we see that there is, I don't foresee this, but if there does occur where a lot of city employees or public sector are moving out of the county to take advantage of this, we can make a change. We can take it away. So it's something that we will continue to look at. It is a good point that you brought up about the part-time work and other adjacent areas, and I think we ought to address that in this document, that we ought to prohibit that. If they want to go work on their own time, then they can do it. They can't utilize the city vehicle in that job. I agree with that. The original intent of the police presence or take-home vehicle, I also agree with you on that, and I think it can still be utilized for those officers that live in Columbus. The one thing that I pointed out early in the presentation is, we saw the 92 policy and this 2019 policy. The environment's changed, so we've got to do something different here to try to not only give the Columbus Police Department the ability to recruit, and they said that this will help them. So we were trying to do something to help them recruit and enhance our numbers in the police department. And then two more quickly, the salary, in number 11, you were talking about the salary of those employees who do have a car allowance, and the car allowance is to enhance that salary. Looking at salaries was not a part of our scope, so we didn't get into that. So we just looked at the allowance, and we note that, for example, the Civic Center director had a car allowance, and all he does is drive, or that person at that time, all that person did was drive from home to the Civic Center, and I just didn't see a need for him to have a car allowance. And there are some other employees within the city that have a car allowance, and I think the committee as well thought that there may be some things that we can look at there. If he's going to get a car allowance, maybe it should be less than $648 a month. And that's where we came up thinking about talking through the range, how much is it utilized, how much is the car used, that kind of thing. So that's where we headed down that road. And the second part of your number 11, talking about the additional 28 cents a mile when they travel, in our survey, in talking with the other communities of similar size, we found no other community that offered that, and we even found no other business that offered that type of additional compensation for driving. So we tried to take all the information we could and put it into this document for council's consideration. This is a suggestion, this is our report. We can massage it and take it in small bites, or we can pick certain departments and put the harness in and test it and see if it works, see how it works, if that's something we want to invest in. There's a lot of different ways, a lot of moving parts here. We can do it a lot of different ways. And so we'd like to work with you and try to move forward, take baby steps if you want to.
Well, and I want to say, Mayor, I don't disagree with you about certain department heads, like Civic Center. That's a great example. I absolutely agree with your approach. And we are going to be recruiting a new Civic Center director. And if it's on a going forward basis, we should apply that. But I just have concerns with going and taking away what's there, and because I think there could be some legal concerns in that. So, but there are those that I could go through and tell you, and I agree with absolutely that one, the one that you picked. That if a car allowance at all, yes, I agree with that.
Well, we pulled together a lot of information from the 1995 policy, and I think back then, in those days, there was to some degree a range in salary, in take-home car allowance, and in looking back at that, the car allowance at that time ranged from $50 up to $210 a month. So there was a range at that time. How we got away from that, I don't know. There's also a part of the code that addresses car allowance, and that car allowance is supposed to be brought to the council for approval. And if a person vacates a position for whatever reason, then that car allowance goes away, and you have to start all over. It's not something that we are supposed to be utilizing to enhance people who come to Columbus, in my opinion. If that car allowance is going to make or break whether a person stays or not, then I think they're already gone, in my opinion. But still, just wanted to make that point.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Crabb?
Thank you. I just have a couple questions. How many of these cars are in Muskogee County, Harris, Talbot, and Chattahoochee? Do we have, out of those 66, how many are in each of the counties?
Yes, we were provided all that information. And
Do you have it that we could write it down, that we know?
well, we'll get it to you. I don't want to call it out.
Sounds good.
Take time to call it out.
Okay,
now, but,
sounds good.
But yeah.
And then I just would like to have some more clarification on number 6, where it says all employees who are issued city-owned vehicles are responsible for the periodic maintenance and upkeep of the vehicle. Does that include financial?
No. Item 6 and 7 was at the request of Drill Short. She informed us that there were times when employees had neglected the proper maintenance of a car.
Okay.
For example, they didn't change the oil when it needed, and they just kept driving it, and the engine locked up, and you got to buy a new engine. And she said that's happened more than one occasion. Well,
So on that occasion, does that employee take on that extra expense
Well-
because they did not maintain it
Well-
properly?
And, Mr.
No,
Mayor,
they do not. I'll let you
in that occasion, that employee does not need to work for us, period.
That was what you said. That's what you said.
Right.
I get that.
He said that.
They did not, it wasn't their responsibility to change it. It's their responsibility to take the vehicle to fleet to be
Right.
serviced.
Okay, I
And in
understand
fact, if
that.
we have employees who are driving our vehicles, and it's not going to cost them anything, and they're at work anyway, and you don't take it to fleet to get service and the engine locks up, that's an employee that I don't want working for us.
And they're told it's time to have a car,
Yes.
Right.
So if Ms. Short has people doing that, it should be getting to the deputy city manager and to me. And they will not work for us.
Councilor Crabb?
Okay, that answered my questions. Thank you.
Is that it? All right, Councilor Thomas?
A number, as Councilor Allen said, a number of the concerns that the city manager brought forth, we did discuss at great length, I think, and came up then with this proposal. There are just a couple of points that I would like to bring to your attention. One is in item number 3, this is the city-owned vehicles may not be driven to any residences in Alabama except for these conditions. And it's our understanding in talking with department heads throughout the city that the only department that this affects, that the state or federal agency oversees, the local agency, is Muskogee County Prison. And the 2 deputy wardens currently live in Alabama. And because of the state or federal requirement of their response time in case something happens either at the prison or dealing with the prison, that they can drive their cars, their city vehicles home. They would be the only employees, as we have been told and understand, that fit this description, that there is a state or federal requirement that you respond in a given amount of time. So, and I think that one of the things that we discussed over and over and over again was trying to work out some kind of an agreement with Alabama about the sovereign immunity piece. And we do think that Attorney General Carr is going to be very helpful to us in that situation. And hopefully, it won't take us another however many years to get that done, so that our officers who live in contiguous counties, and that's why we said Harris, Talbot, and Chattahoochee, they're contiguous to Muskogee, contiguous Alabama counties would also be able to take their cars home. This is a really important, I think, deal to the committee, that we need to make sure that those kinds of things are taken care of. We also talked about some of well, one of the examples that the city manager gave was the police car being parked at the fire station. It's my understanding, and if this is not correct, it needs to be corrected, but in every fire station at this point, when the truck leaves the station, the bay is closed and locked. There's a garage door, if you will, that comes down and closes and locks the door. If you go to a fire station right now where the firefighters are in the station, you can't get in without, because the outside doors are locked. So that piece has been, we think, taken care of, and the fire chief did not raise that with the committee when we talked with him. And I think one of the things that I want everybody to understand, the committee is trying to do what is best for the city in order to provide transportation to those employees who work for the city. Our goal was not to, how many of these can we reduce, what can we take away, but it was, if we have someone who is working for the city, we want them to be able to have the optimum conditions to do that. And so we were not looking to take anything away. And in item number 11, it says that at the time of employment or at the request of the employee of the supervisor, this is when the determination would be made. We talked a good bit about, is this retroactive? And I think while we didn't take a formal vote, I think this language helps with that at the time of employment, or if the supervisor requests, then we'll take a look at whether or not the car allowance and how much and that sort of thing. We did say that this would be looked at periodically, but at least annually. And Councilor Allen and I had a conversation about if there is a concern by a department head, once this gets into place, or by the city manager or whatever, please bring that to our attention. Otherwise, we won't know that there's a concern, and we can deal with it, and we can try to resolve it or bring something to the committee. But I want, if nothing else goes out of here, for people to recognize that the goal of this committee was to give our employees what they need to do the job for the city of Columbus. And that includes all employees who may have a city car or a city allowance or may not or whatever. We think that it is appropriate that we treat particularly our public safety employees in the same way, that if they live in Muskogee County, they currently can drive their car home. If they live in a contiguous county, and I believe, and the committee members may correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have people on the public safety who live outside of Muskogee or one of those three contiguous, except Alabama. We have one who had a legal address somewhere else, but that person does not live there. That's not their usual residence. So we're looking at the contiguous counties, and we're trying our best to get Alabama to come to their senses and give us the sovereign immunity that we need. We did talk to the police chief about the Metro Task Force. We currently have officers in Muskogee County, in the Columbus PD, that are on that Metro Task Force that regularly are in Alabama for that Metro Task Force. Those officers are also sworn officers of the departments in Alabama. Sheriff Taylor, Heath Taylor in Russell County swears those people, so that covers their immunity, if you will, because of their work condition, not because of their residence. So we've been doing this since November, I think. So we've been making hay slowly, I think, and we will continue to take a look at it as issues come up. I learned an awful lot being on this committee about vehicles in the city of Columbus and what's there and what's available. So hopefully we'll be able to put a policy in place that will answer some of those questions and concerns. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Garrett?
I do want to thank the committee for all the hard work y'all have done on this, and I appreciate you bringing this to us. The city manager did raise some very good points, and I would hope, and y'all may have already addressed this, but if there was a way that we could, I don't want to tie the police hands as far as allowing people to take them out of county, but there are added costs with maintenance, there are added costs with mileage if somebody's driving out of county. We lose the visibility of having a police car here, so if there's a way that we could incentivize them to stay in Muskogee, allow the take-home cars out of county, but find some sort of way, there's just some sort of perk, because we're also losing on tax dollars too. I mean, it's a myriad of things that I'd like to keep them in Muskogee if we can, but I don't want to penalize somebody for living out there, but if there's a way we can create some sort of incentive to keep them in Muskogee, I think that's a big part of this program, at least on the police side. I mean, I got one car that's parked at a church in my district, and every time I see it, I know it's empty, but I still slow down when I see it. So I do think anything we can do to get that aspect back in Muskogee would be great, but I do want to give them the tools to recruit too, so.
Thank you, sir.
I think Mayor, if I could,
Sure.
The police chief mentioned back in the budget process, he mentioned several ideas to help incentivize recruiting. And I think we ought to, as the next part of the budget process, we ought to begin to look at a lot of those things to incentivize, as you said, to live in Columbus. I think that was part of the city manager's concern. It was part of ours too when we met with them. But they say that there are those that live outside that would come work here if they could take their car home. So it would be an incentive. So as you know, we're short manpower there and lady power. And we sure need to do what we can to try to incentivize them to come to Columbus. So, thank you.
Councilor Barnes?
For one who sees an immense benefit for the police officers, I feel safe when I see police cars. I mean, I think it's huge. And I think that's one of the incentive ways that we can use to keep. I was shocked to hear that we're down 90 officers. And one thing I'd like to say, I know we have a committee for everything. I think it's huge. I think that's good for us to do. Have some committee members at this committee here and the recorder's court that can look at all the issues, take the time, because we are part-time as far as to peruse areas that need to be, for certain departments. Talking about the police shortage, this is huge. I walk the streets every day. And you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing the fact that we need to have more blue and whites, and it's not the chief's fault. I always hear that the chief of police needs to have It's not the chief's fault. We as a council need to jump on this issue and do something about this here. And I'd like to request to have a committee that we can look at this. I know that Mike Baker and myself were on it. We were on the other committee. And we put some of the officers on the street in, as well as the chief and his command staff to address this problem. We have a problem right here that we need to address. And I think that I would feel comfortable if we had a committee looking at that. Speaking about this issue, the city manager brought up a lot of valid reasons why we need to slow this up and look at these issues here. And it also gives time for the citizens that we represent, the ones that we're supposed to verbalizing their concerns about issues, allow the community a chance to masticate this and chew it, and then get back to us on concerns that they may have and suggestions. And so I'd like to have a copy of all your concerns. I know you brought up some valid points that we need to look at that deal fiscally. And so we really need to slow the train a little bit on this issue. And I'd like to also see a committee. The citizens that I see every day are concerned. And I tell them it's not the police chief. And I have individuals who are related to me who work for CPD. And they're telling me, and they're supportive of the chief, but we have to take some kind of relief on these officers. And so we need to come up with ideas where we can start keeping some of the personnel here when they apply. And one of the incentives, by the way, is the cost on for that. But we need to slow the train a little bit for some of the issues that the city manager verbalized.
Thank you. Councilor Woodson?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be on the committee. This was my first one in all the years that I've been here. We just started building committees, and it's very beneficial to us as a city council member because we are part-time. We rely on staff, and we rely on other people to make our decisions and the little bit of research that we do. There was a lot of comments made about the officers there, where they lived. I don't have my book here, and I don't think anybody in the committee does, but we had a list of where everyone lived in order to determine the miles. And majority of our police officers, a big chunk of it, does not live in Columbus. They do not. So while we're talking about it, we need to be careful.
Majority of them do.
Yeah, okay. Oh, opposite. Majority of them do. Few of them do not live. But because of our real estate in Columbus, people tend to move to Phoenix City and other areas to live because they can get more property for their tax dollars. So there are other things that we need to consider when we compare ourselves with other communities. Other communities have other things that we don't. We have caps on our tax base. You know, there's a lot of things that work in this bowl. It's not just one or two items. So like as part of the committee, I'm glad to hear another part of it. We did get the city manager's email and conversation. And that's what's healthy about it. That's what a committee's for. It's for people to voice their opinions, to find a happy medium for what's best for our city and for our taxpayers. I think it's healthy to disagree as long as we respect each other and we find that common ground for the better good of the citizens, not us as an elected official or those who serve the citizens. So I'm happy to go back to the table and continue the discussion. We have not been in no hurry. If you heard Council Allen mention, we've been at it since November 2018, and we are in July 2019. I don't think we are in a quick process. We're just trying to find the right solution. This isn't a done deal either. We can come back and massage it and fix it. So I'm very excited, and anybody else who has more comments and concerns that they can bring to our attention It's important. And you're right, it's important for our officers. And I'm like you, Walker. Every time I go to work, there's an officer parked at a certain place, his car. Every time I pass it, I slow down too, and I see him, his car there. So it does make a big impact when you have a police officer in the community. There's some issues we have to work on that, and Councilmember Barnes, I agree with you. I think we need to put a committee together to address those like we had in the past. And not only address them, but try to implement something so that our officers are more visible, but at the same time, we got to get our community to embrace our officers, because sometimes officers are afraid. You know, they're doing their job, but they're afraid when they go home. You know, when they leave, they don't know if they're going to be back tonight. So it's a little bit of both that we have to look at. It's a bigger picture, and it takes time, and we're not going to have the right answers, and we're not going to satisfy everybody's needs. But I think if we work together and try to do the right thing for our community, we would continue to be a great community that we are today. And thank you for the feedback. I think it was interesting, and I thought it was great dialogue today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Barnes.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression I think this committee is rushing. That's not my intent.
Yes, sir.
But what I'm saying is that what we're here for, each of us here, is to represent the citizens. So you can have all the committees get together from now to ad infinitum. But it's the citizens are the ones that we represent and really need to have the input. We need to hear from them. So I'm not saying that you all are rushing. I want our citizens who pay their taxes, whom we're here to represent, to get the information and to call you and Gary and all of us and give their input. And I have members of my family on the police force. I'm 150% for CPD. And I like the cars in the community. I feel safe. But what I'm saying is that we need to slow down, and some of the things that the city manager brought up were things that I think a lot of us hadn't even thought of. So when I say slow down, it's allow the citizens to hear what we're saying and get feedback to us and to consider the concerns that the city manager has.
I agree.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm somewhat embarrassed that I didn't say this earlier, but let me say to the clerk of council, Sandra, I want you to know how valuable Lindsay was to our committee. She literally is with child and due in September. And she literally labored for this committee. She was at every meeting, dedicated, on time. Even when I forgot my key, she unlocked the door, let me in. I mean, she was there every day. She let us, yeah, several of us. So,
and reminded us.
Lindsay, thank you for your dedication and devotion to helping us, taking minutes and even providing, comments during the meeting. She offered some valid points to us. So, thank you for all you did to help us.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilor Thomas.
She was amazing.
One thing that I do want to address that the city manager addressed about the public safety taking their cars to a part-time job in Harris, Talbot, or Chattahoochee County. Our officers cannot now have a part-time job in a contiguous county representing themselves as a Columbus police officer. They cannot wear their uniform. They don't do any of that kind of stuff. So I would think that the chief would have in his regs that you cannot drive this car to a part-time job. They can't take a part-time job in another county representing themselves as an officer of Columbus Police Department. So just wanted to clear that piece of it up. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. All right. Listen, thanks to the committee for taking a look at this issue, and I applaud them for allowing this to continue to unfold. I don't think there's any, as I heard, there's no sense of urgency to react to the recommendations right away. In fact, what it did was open the door for communicating and investigating a couple of the other items that were brought out. So good work by everybody. And I think it is important that we kind of look at this stuff on a regular basis because as Councilor Allen pointed out, our environment has changed and is changing by the minute. So we're going to continue to look at it, and I know that they'll bring back any hard recommendations that they think ought to be considered by council.
That's all we had listed today, Mayor.
Okay. Well, we'll move into the public agenda, and I want to remind the folks that are appearing on the agenda that they'll have 5 minutes in which to talk and address council. If there's an issue that you're asking council's action on, then you will not be able to comment past 5 minutes, but if they have a direct question to ask you, you'll be allowed to respond. And then if you don't get a chance to finish,
I came here on a 5-year plan. It's turned into a 10-year plan because Columbus is the toughest town I've ever organized in, by far. You got prison labor. God don't like ugly. The city manager complaining about his salary, he makes more than anybody. That's what I saw on the front of a Ledger Inquirer newspaper a couple of years ago. What is wrong? What is wrong? The School of America's Watch is coming back to Columbus, November 15th. Hundreds of people. I'm on the host committee. I bring money here.